Hey, I'm Fred Johnson for the Airailimages channel. Thanks for joining. We're going to talk about the greenhouse B-24 Liberators, the first batch that had a large greenhouse-style nose without a power turret. In fact, take a look here. This is the long, narrow optical glass bombsight panel that the bombardier would look through in a B-24D. I bought this from somebody who bought a lot of surplus out of the Spokane Army Air Depot after the end of World War II. It's a genuine piece from a B-24D. Let's talk some more. The United States obligated more aluminum to the construction of B-24 Liberators than any other aircraft of World War II. Well over 18,000 B-24s and derivatives flew from 5 assembly lines. That's a military aircraft construction tally we're unlikely to see again. With a crew of 10 and with that number cycling through the system from 1941 to 1945, and thousands more Americans building and maintaining B-24s, the Liberator touched more families in this country than any other aircraft of the war. Chances are, if your family has been in the U.S. for 4 generations or so, you have an ancestor whose path crossed with the B-24 during World War II. The XB-24 prototype of December 1939 set the tone for the series, with its elegant Davis high-lift wing contrasting with almost cartoonish rounded twin tails. The prototype also embraced a greenhouse nose of many curved and faceted plexiglass panels surrounding a flat and optically pure glass bombsight window. The original consolidated XB-24 showed the early short-body design that set the tone. For economy of design and to meet Air Corps deadlines, Consolidated embraced the wing and tail of its experimental Model 31 flying boat in the design of this Model 32 that the world knows as the B-24. That greenhouse may have been appropriate in pre-war design rationale, but it soon proved woefully undergunned as fitted to early combat models of the Liberator once the shooting started. Evolution of the B-24 between 1939 and 1945 includes a distinct run of greenhouse bombers before power nose turrets were introduced to make the Liberator more menacing to enemy fighter pilots who developed a proclivity for head-on gunnery passes. The XB-24 prototype lent its configuration to the similar Liberator Mark I for the Royal Air Force and the sole YB-24, plus a small run of B-24A models for the U.S. Army Air Forces. Length was computed at 63 feet 9 inches. This configuration had a short nose ahead of the cockpit, short enough to be unaesthetic. The last B-24A served the Army Air Forces in utility roles long after the Liberator design evolved into a longer, more combative bomber. The Liberator visage took a turn for the better with the introduction of the Royal Air Force's Liberator II model, which first flew from Consolidated Aircraft's San Diego plant in 1941. The British developed power bomber gun turrets to their liking and intended to mount a tail turret on their Liberator II bombers. Popular logic says the tail turret added weight after the fulcrum of the wing that needed to be countered by an extended nose, so the Liberator II stretched ahead of the cockpit almost 3 feet. The stretch also gave the bombardier and navigator more working room, and the new length of 66 feet 4 inches set the tone for the rest of the greenhouse Liberators that followed. Consolidated Aircraft identified the Liberator II as the company's LB-30. The Liberator had grown into its more aesthetic self with the Liberator II, and the next pre-production version for the U.S. Army Air Forces, 9 B-24Cs, kept the longer nose while adding an American Martin top turret. Provision was made for a tail turret of Consolidated's in-house design. The C models were available for tests in the service's extensive and urgent wartime development operations at places like Eglin Field, Florida. The handful of C models proved the design, and Consolidated shifted into high production of the follow-on B-24D, nearly indistinguishable from the B-24C. B-24Ds served American and British forces around the world from late 1942 well into the war. The Army Air Forces knew it wanted B-24s and lots of them, so additional Liberator assembly lines were undertaken by Consolidated in Fort Worth, as well as Ford at Willow Run, Michigan, Douglas at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and North American at Dallas, Texas. The B-24D originated at the Consolidated home plant in San Diego. The B-24D and its derivatives were the first of the Liberators to emerge from multiple assembly lines. Automaker Ford's foray into the mass production of complex heavy bombers ultimately proved highly successful, but the learning curve was steep for a company more familiar with steel car fenders than aluminum fuselage skins. Ford's version of the B-24D was distinguished as the B-24E, and the Army Air Forces allowed Ford to produce essentially obsolescent E models used for stateside training, while the automobile manufacturer, coached by Consolidated engineers, honed their aviation mass production chops at Willow Run. The concept of 5 assembly lines for production of B-24s envisioned that Ford, and to a lesser extent Consolidated in San Diego, would create knockdown or KD kits of Liberators, in addition to finishing whole bombers. The KD kits were shipped overland in special trailers to the Douglas plant in Tulsa and Consolidated's Fort Worth facility, where they were assembled as completed bombers. Later in the war, the Fort Worth factory made its own B-24s from scratch. Just across town from Fort Worth, North American Aviation's operation in Dallas, Texas, created its own run of B-24 Liberators, starting with an insignificant number of greenhouse-nosed B-24Gs, similar to the classic B-24D. Nobody ever complained about the working room and the visibility in the greenhouse-nosed B-24s, but necessary defense of the bomber led to multiple ideas on how to install a power nose turret in the Liberator, and the outcome was sweet for the gunner and stifling for the bombardier. Japanese and German fighter pilots made head-on attacks with closing speeds sometimes exceeding 500 miles per hour. Eventually, production B-24s would feature a manned nose turret with rapid powered movement, 250 caliber machine guns, and a sophisticated optical gun sight. But in early 1943, the first B-24 nose turret configuration was a successful cut-and-try experiment with existing greenhouse B-24Ds. Colonel Arthur Rogers of the 90th Bomb Group was an early proponent of placing a nose turret in the B-24D. Credit for the design sometimes goes to Lieutenant Colonel Marion Unruh of the 5th Bomb Group, an early Pacific user of Liberator bombers. And Unruh previously was the 90th Group's operations officer and had worked with Colonel Rogers. Rogers and Unruh foresaw placing a B-24D's powered tailgun turret into the upper part of the nose. The idea offered several viable solutions simultaneously. It rearranged weight for a better overall weight and balance configuration for the B-24D, and it gave the B-24 better forward firepower. And in the tail position, where enemy attacks did not have the rapid closing speed of frontal assaults, an open-air lightweight tailgun emplacement with a pair of 50 caliber guns on a simple post proved sufficient for defense. The Hawaiian Air Depot undertook conversion of more than 200 greenhouse B-24Ds that received distinctive nose turret modifications for use in combat. The end of the line for this B-24D, with the Hawaii modification, came at a salvage yard in Nadzab, New Guinea late in the war. The Hawaii nose jobs are recognizable by the shallow, understated bombardier station beneath the turret. Darker olive drab paint around the nose is a telltale sign of modification. And at the Oklahoma City Air Depot, hands-on designers and mechanics rendered their own version of the B-24D with a nose turret, differing from the Hawaiian product by deepening the chin area to give the bombardier more room and side windows for situational awareness. Later production B-24s with nose turrets would offer a deep chin, though not as pronounced as the Oklahoma City conversions. Consolidated in San Diego and Ford at Willow Run wrestled with the best way to give future B-24 Liberators a nose turret on the production line. In 1943, Consolidated installed an Emerson electric turret in the nose of former greenhouse B-24D number 41-24185. The redesigned nose would evolve slightly, but Convair and Ford B-24 designs were distinctly different. The sweep of the turret and its tracking speed made this a formidable defensive armament for the Liberator. Although several iterations and modifications of the Consolidated tail turret would find their way into Consolidated's early factory-built Liberators as nose turrets, Ford mastered the use of the new Emerson electric turret, once intended as a B-24 tail turret, and now embraced as the optimal and available nose turret of choice for B-24s. The Emerson's electric motors were said to give the gunner quicker responses when tracking an enemy aircraft. The rush to produce nose-turreted B-24s gave Ford the honor of delivering the first Liberator so equipped from the factory on the last day of June 1943. It was a new Ford B-24H. The manufacturers understood the need to introduce nose turrets for all future production Liberators. The results gave a distinct look to the noses of Ford-built B-24s, different from that of Consolidated products. Both styles endured through the end of B-24 production in 1945. Unlike the underslung chin turret that gave the B-17G frontal protection, nose turrets on B-24s added one more hump to inhibit forward visibility for Liberator pilots. The B-24J, with some variations in turrets and fairings, was the only model of the B-24 series produced on all 5 Liberator assembly lines. The B-24L and B-24M were only built by Convair in San Diego and Ford at Willow Run, where deliveries of these models were sufficient to meet demands of the Army Air Forces. This allowed the other manufacturers to use their capacity to make other aircraft for the rest of the war. The B-24L and M models continued to refine the Liberator line, and late Ford M models introduced a revised cockpit canopy and windscreen to the Liberator. While the Army Air Forces converted B-24Ds to accept nose turrets, the Navy took their own perspective on the problem of forward armament and added the round Airco bow turret. Yes, it's the Navy, so it was a bow turret, not a nose turret. A danger faced by turret gunners like the one who sat in this Navy PB-4Y1 bow turret was the potential for the turret to jam when turned to the side, making egress back into the fuselage impossible in flight. Targeted by German flak, this Liberator had one prop-feathered and inoperative right main landing gear and a trapped turret gunner. Returning in darkness to England, pilot Charles F. Willis Jr. faced the ordeal of setting his crippled bomber down in an unlit potato field, which he accomplished so successfully the gunner was unharmed and Willis flew the repaired Liberator from the farm. Willis went on to become president of Alaska Airlines decades later. As the summer of 1943 roared into 1944 and 1945 before war's end, the Army Air Forces grappled with issues of visibility for pilots as well as bombardiers, brought about by the placement of vital nose turrets. The ultimate answer, conceived and applied to only 8 single-tail B-24N models by Ford, was a new style of Emerson ball turret fitted well into a nose that had many glazed panels. That cleaner nose job was slated for incorporation on a production run of more than 5,000 single-tail B-24Ns, but the end of the war axed the contract in 1945. And remember Marion Unruh, who helped pioneer the use of power turrets in the noses of B-24s? He went on to be a well-known, well-liked aircraft home builder in Kansas. Unruh died in the crash of one of his aircraft in April 1968.